Good evening. Our last speaker for the day, Mr. Jim Sparks, has experienced unexplained encounters since 1988. 95 to 100% of the time, he has remained completely conscious, remembering every one of his experiences. During those times and during those experiences, he has witnessed and become familiar with some very highly advanced pieces of technology. Here to speak about the time travel, and time travel is a fact, Mr. Jim Sparks.
Hey, can everybody hear me all right? Can you hear me? Okay, let me know if it gets duller. Hello everybody, it's great to be here. And I'm not too sure how many amongst you are very familiar with the Jim Sparks story. But to fill you in at first, I've had abduction experiences for the last 23 years. Prior to 1988, I had absolutely no interest in the phenomena whatsoever. Sure, I thought UFOs were neat and things like that, but that's about as far as it went. And abruptly and out of nowhere in late 1988, I started having my first experiences. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what they were in those first few months. I didn't know they were demons, devils, aliens. I couldn't tell one from the other. I didn't want anything to do with it. They had me paralyzed. I was always in the same room, sitting in front of the same table, and they conducted medical procedures, wouldn't tell me who they were, why they were there. I could yell, I could scream, I could curse. I started loathing them, hating their guts. Better than 90% of the time, the extraterrestrials that dealt with me were commonly referred to as Grace, with the short little worker beans. I was forced to learn converting our letters and our numbers, block lettering, cursive writing into a symbolic form. I thought it was stupid. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. When I would get back, I've had well over 100 abductions, and the first 18 months were a living hell and a living nightmare. And there's a reason for all of this, because it's going to sound a little bit negative at first. It's because it's exactly what they are, and what they are exactly is non-human intelligent beings. Emphasis on non-human. They don't have the same social structure. They don't have the same social structure, and they don't have emotions as we do, and they're extremely difficult to be around or be with. What made me unique, and even in those early days, was they never took the memory away from me, as I've seen years later with most abductees. Usually they'll take the memory away, and when people get back, they either thought they had a nice experience, or a traumatizing experience, or fragmented memories. And this nightmare went on for approximately 6 years, but it started to improve as 1 year led into the other. I tried to run away from these guys. I fought them tooth and nail every time they wanted to do anything. I was on my own. Of course, I couldn't get anybody to believe it in those days. And so it was just not very good. But as time went on, it got better and better and better. And I started to see things and notice things and start taking things in, because I started seeing some purpose for what they were doing. Little did I know at the time, which I'm going to get into now, and that's going to lead into their technologies, and then we're going to talk about the distortion of time, which time is something that I believe they've mastered, and that's the travel in it all naturally. But anyway, as things went on, I started to learn that this extraterrestrial symbolic form that they crammed into me to learn was a way of getting a monstrous amount of data in a very short period of time. You could take 20 pages of text and take whatever time it takes to read it, and then they could flash a symbol in front of your face, and you would absorb that whole 20 pages within a split second. So there was some kind of mental exercise with this, with that. So that started easing me a little bit, like, man, this is going somewhere. Any opportunity that I had in those days to get up and fight them, if I wasn't paralyzed, I would have, as I used to fondly say, now I fondly say, if you let me free, I'll squeeze your fat heads off your skinny little necks. And yelling and screaming and cursing and making up cuss words all along the way. But things started getting better as, excuse me, as time went on. What makes them so interesting, and then what I know is in store for us, is the fact that they have amazing capabilities. And if we can evolve and cross the line without self-destruction, we're going to be capable of these amazing abilities also. But to interact with these beings, excuse me, to interact with these beings right off the bat is just something that took a long time to do. So along with sharing with you about the time travel aspect, I'm going to share with you why it's so difficult to be with them and what it would take from the years that I've learned how to be in that environment and get something out of it and make a connection. We're talking about beings that are 100% and completely telepathic. They do not speak. They have the ability to think and process information literally 100 times faster than we do. Whether these things be natural or whether they are technically enhanced, I tend to believe that they're technically enhanced because in a little while in this talk, I'm going to talk about time travelers who are near future time travelers. I call anything near future within 500 years. They're people, and they're interesting, and it'll be fun to share what they're about. So they got the thought-activated technology. And so if they think it, the technology operates. So now you're 100% telepathic. You can communicate and process information 100 times faster. You have technologies that are a marvel, that are way ahead of ours. Some are close. And they just think they're machines, and their machines do. They have the ability to manipulate matter, which I believe is one step towards time travel. And I'm going to point out some examples in the early years of how they manipulated matter and mass in a way that amazing things that can be done. And as I said, it leads to the time travel aspect. They can move into and use other dimensions. And over the years, I've learned that that is really so. It's not just a theory. There are other dimensions that occupy the same space and the same time that we are in, and there's entities that naturally live in these dimensions. And it can explain, in my eyes or in my view, a whole host of reasons why we see ghosts or why we see things that appear to be devils or demons and things like that throughout our history, because it bleeds in sometimes, or sometimes they just step into this dimension. But they have the technology to do that. They can span the universe with little to no time passing. So almost instantaneously span the universe. And I'll tell you what, they just beat the dickens out of our thinking. I used to didn't understand what 500 years or 1,000 years or several thousand years ahead in technology would mean when someone said, well, they may be thousands of years ahead. But I'm not putting them on a pedestal and putting them in a godlike manner, because I don't claim to embrace alien culture, and I still have a strong and healthy skepticism about everything they are. And I always make my points in that manner, hard, firm, and strong. But I earned the right to interact that way, and it took many years. But they do have the ability to travel that fast. But what's interesting about them is they are just the best tricksters in the universe. They can pop in and out of our skies. They can put thoughts in your head and make you believe they're benevolent or they're not benevolent. They can take the wisest minds on the planet and lead them to believe the technology is such when there's so many light years ahead, and the things that we care about they don't, and some of these things are pretty neat, some of them are beyond my understanding. But they can travel that way. And what I really would like to get out of them the most is these beings have conquered death. They don't have to die. They figured it out. And I think what would be neat for us as human beings is to be able to possess something like that for the first time in our history. And I'm going to go over some steps that also in this that point in that direction that we can evolve to that point where all of us can get there. But what I like about the idea of conquering death and the way they are is they have all the time in the world to learn. They starve for data. They love information. If there's an emotion there for anything at all, and they have emotions in different ways, it's that for information. It gives you all the time you could possibly need to know and change and pick your destiny, to know where you want to go spiritually, to possibly really see for the first time in human history what the hereafter is, instead of dying first to find out. Making a choice or making a decision whether you want to go to the hereafter or evolve to the next step, because you have the knowledge. You will always have the know on what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and feel better than you ever have in your life. So if you could take the prime of yourself and feel that way every living second, and knowing that you're not going to pass away, what can beat that? And make all these choices. But, however, where we're going to start off now is I want to start off in the early years because the theme tonight is time distortion and time travel being a fact. And then I'm going to lead us to an area where I was advised by them on what it would take for us to move in that direction. And then you can take this information and bat it around for yourselves and see how you like it and maybe take advantage of it, and it'll help move us in that way. But in those early years, back in 1988, when I first had my first experience, it was dreamlike, and I had the same reoccurring dream. It went the same way. Someone or some things were escorting me out of my bedroom in the middle of the night, down the hallway, into the guest room, and then we would approach the window, and the window had glass, naturally, a frame, a screen, blinds, and a drape, and we would walk through it. And this will demonstrate. Now, this is a sketch that I want to show you. This sketch will demonstrate. The window was a ground. It was a floor. It was down at the floor level. The window, and we would walk through the window and into the woods, and then experiences would take place on board, and they would bring me back the same way. Again, walking through the window. So here, in this example, they distorted matter and made the window and the matter itself, creating some sort of a field where you can pass right through it. So that's a pretty strong ability when you can just make a wall not there, in a sense, and walk through that wall. And I think what made that whole particular scene or that scenario particularly amazing was the fact that whatever was out in the front yard and on the grass would stick to the bottom of my feet because there would be dew on the grass, and my footprints, the heel of my toe would be entrenched in the lawn, and then my toes would be on the carpet and embedded in the carpet, so you could see it, the ball of my feet and my toes. So half a foot is outside and the other half is inside. So, and then all the grass and everything that would be stuck on the bottom of my feet, I would drag through into the bedroom. So those were the first signs that matter could be manipulated. Then I used to call that going the easy way. That's when extraterrestrials come into your house or your room or your car when the craft is on the ground, and they would escort you. But they played that technical ability with the walls. Going the hard way, which is the names that I've named these things, would be when a craft is in flight, either hovering or just hauling butt. And they would pull you. Now, the technology was extremely rough on your body. First thing would happen no matter where you are, is again, they left me with all the consciousness, so I can share this stuff. It sounds like really scary stuff. It was scary stuff. I'm not saying this is the way they would introduce themselves today, but this is what they did to Jim Sparks, and that's why I can tell you this. They never let me lose my consciousness. And like I said in the beginning, I thought they were monsters. Now they're totally the opposite. Things have really evolved and flowered, and they're wonderful. But anyway, in those days when you were pulled the hard way, when they were in flight, you would be paralyzed. You'd get this sensation in your belly, in the pit of your stomach, and it would work its way up your torso until it finally got into your chest. And when it hit your heart, it would race. It seemed like 1,000 miles an hour. And then you would black out, but you would still be conscious. Your eyes would close, everything would be black. And then you would hear this whipping, whirling sound, horrifically loud inside your head, and then you would get this sensation of acceleration, not going up, but going like you're being pulled down, like 100 times faster than a roller coaster on its first drop. And then you would black out, and you would be there. Okay, the point behind going into this technology is the fact that when you moved from point A to point B, from home or a car on board, a technology was used to obviously pull you through the roof. Again, we have a distortion of matter. You were never encased in anything. You weren't inside a ship. You didn't have the protection of a craft. So somehow you could still breathe and you were still alive when you went from point A to point B, or you yourself are transformed to get to point B. Again, another distortion of mass. And so going these two methods is the first sign that they can manipulate matter, and what I'm going over with you this evening. So that's the easy way, and that's the hard way. As I said, there's no protection. During these time periods on board, I would ask them over and over and over and over again, why me? Why me? Why me? And I could never get a response, a direct response. They never would answer the question. And I would scream and yell it, and as the time went on and on and on, I had one particular experience. Now this is going back, like I said, the first few years, and this is going on 23 years, where they went through a procedure for intellect, and I did particularly well, so they let me ask a question that I could get an answer. One thing about these guys is they don't like you to ask questions. They're only going to let you know what they want you to know when they want you to know. Because a lot of people say to me, hey, can you ask them this, can you ask them that, but they just let me know what they want to know, so it almost does no good to do otherwise, but at least in that day and time. So when I said, why me? That was, I want to know why I'm here. Instead of putting it into words, the first holographic scene showed up in the air, and the first part of that scene, let's see if I can get this gizmo to work here. There it is. And the first part of that scene, the first scene I mean, holographic scene, was a World War II scene. And I saw a family member of mine, or what appeared to be a family member of mine because I recognized my face right over here. And so it was an indication that they follow family lines. That was the first data that I received from them telepathically, that we follow family lines. But when you viewed this hologram, it was 100%, looked like 100% real life. And I saw someone that looked like a part of me because it had my facial features. And I knew that that was coming from that time period. And you got a sense about you knowing that it wasn't just a movie being made, but they actually went back to that time period and took these holograms so you could see it. And then the next one that came up was, I would say, somewhere around the 15th century. And it was a community on a mountain, a village on a mountainside, and it was a farming village, and it could have been a fishing village too because at the bottom was a sea, and it could have been Sicily because my father's side is from Sicily. That's pretty much the impression I got on that. And then I saw these two people, humble-looking people, in the farmland, in the field, farming, harvesting. And then one of those people looked like me. And then when the next scene came up, that scene disappeared. It was a scene of, I would say, around the 8th century, anywhere from the 8th to the 9th century, and this one was kind of funny. Because it showed someone that looked like me again, sitting with 3 other guys, and we're in that, Dark Ages, medieval type clothes. I had this stupid hat on that was kind of pointed like a leather hat, and we had the large mugs, and we were obviously blitzed. And I'm watching this thing, just to see this thing in real life just appear before your eyes, and I'm watching this silly cap that kept falling in front of my face, and the rest of them were laughing at me, and I would get it back because obviously I was lit, and it kept falling back. I was trying to drink the beer. So we're still messing with time in a way, but it's going to get neat here. So the next scene, which I believe I have here, should be the next one. Oops, that jumped too far. And let's see. All right, well, the next scene, I'll just have to describe it. The next scene was a scene of Rome. And it looked like the Roman Senate. And there were 2 people. One was holding a scroll, and they were debating a political issue. And I could see myself in the bleachers, in a robe, in a toga. And again, there I could see my face. Now, this is when I really got really mad at them. Because the next scene was this. They looked like half ape, half human. They were foraging for food. And then the telepathic message to me was that we manipulated these evolving creatures with our genes to make humans, Homo sapiens sapien, what you are today. And I yelled and I screamed and I told them they were full of everything under the sun, but even though I knew it was true. So again, now we have the distortion of matter, and then we have here the taken back thousands of years, untold, maybe 100,000, 200,000 years, their ability to go back in time and show these things. So another distortion of time in these events was the very interesting situation, and this one I lived out in my face to face with myself. This happened about 8 years ago, and this one was extreme, and this one made me a believer that their time travel is a fact. I was laying on my sofa, and I was watching television. And as I was watching TV, I decided to get up from the sofa and go into the kitchen to get a snack. So I got up. There's a reason for me going into this detail. I got up from the sofa and I walked across the living room. And I had an aquarium on a counter, like an island counter. And I stopped and I looked at the fish for a little while. And I went around the aquarium into the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator door. The light came on. And I tinkered around in there. I took a drink of Coca-Cola, took a bite of some ham or something, and I shut the refrigerator door. And then I came back. And I walked back to the sofa, and I laid myself back on the sofa like this to watch TV. And that going the hard way situation started. I started hearing that whipping, whirling sound in my head, that energy in my stomach coming up to my heart, knowing now that I'm going to get pulled. And they took me on board, and they went through a couple of hours of procedures, and then they brought me back. And I found myself back on the sofa in the same position. The only problem was, and this was the real eye-opener, they brought me back about 2 or 3 minutes before I left. So amazing point one was a couple of hours went by there, and here I am back 2 or 3 minutes before I left. How did I know I was back 2 to 3 minutes before I left? Because I saw me standing in front of me with its back facing me. It scared the holy gaga out of me. Walking towards the kitchen, and I kept my mouth shut, and I was shaking, and I was scared, and I was watching myself in solid form, looking at the fish. Going into the kitchen, I heard the refrigerator door open so I can hear the physical aspects of it. The light came on, and I'm watching myself tinker in the refrigerator, getting something to drink, just like what had happened, as I had done it. And then the refrigerator door shut, and me, the other me, started coming back. And that's when my heart started racing almost out of my mouth, because I was wondering, what would me do if me saw me? And what would this me do? And interestingly enough, as I came back around the aquarium and I started heading back to the sofa, that me didn't see me. I could see myself, but my other self could not see me. And then I got even more scared as this other self started walking towards the sofa, because I was afraid he was going to squash me and lay on me. And I didn't want me to do that. However, when the other self from the past, so you might as well say I traveled back in time. When the other self from the past came within a couple of feet of me on the sofa, it started to fade away as it came in. So these experiences were wild, but they were technology, and I knew it was. And I later learned that none of these things were happening by accident in these 23 years. There was a purpose for all of this stuff. I smoke cigarettes. To give you another example of their technology, how they can save the planet once we can loosen it, and I'll go over that in a second, and then it'll bring us back to time. I'm a smoker. I never asked them to do me any favors. Okay, so I'll start right there. I find myself in an experience, and it's a medical procedure, and I become conscious in the middle of this procedure. And I find myself on a journey, and I smell this horrendous saliva. I'm paralyzed, I can't move, but I could see, and I'm at an angle where I'm laying on my sideways on it, and I could see, but I smell this awful smell of saliva. And I could see this, this square box-looking thing, like on a shelf, and I don't know what's going on. I just know it's a medical thing. I've been through it before. They've extracted semen. They do the anal probes. They do everything that's so much fun. And this was some other thing they were doing, because now as the years went by, in those first 6 years, even though I still hated their guts in that time period, I would see what they were doing and I didn't understand it, and I blacked out. That was the end of that. And when I regained consciousness, I found myself, this is one of the first times they set me free from being paralyzed. I found myself in that room over that 6-year period of time, not paralyzed. Now, it took 6 years to get to this point, and I'm standing in the room that they've had me paralyzed, sitting on this bench and a screen in front of it, and a teaching machine. The teaching machine was artificial intelligence, and it would combine with your mind and your body and your soul, and it would teach you things. And it was a fascinating machine. Any scientist would give its eyes tooth to have something like this. It was a phenomenal machine. At the time, I still didn't like it, but I was free for one of the first times ever in those years. I was standing and leaning on the table. And then through the corridor, which these guys usually came through, here came two grays. Amazingly enough, I didn't run after them and try to kill them. I didn't try to tear the ship up along the way to see if I can get into the engine room or anything like, a movie. And they came into the room, and they were holding one was holding a black box. And so they walked over to me as they walk, kind of funny. And I look at their face, and I look down, and I look at their eyes, and I look down because I don't like to stare into their eyes because they absorb you. And I was still a little bit feisty when I responded to them. And they took the black box, and they put it on the table, and they pushed it towards me with their bony fingers, and then backed away from it. And I said, "What the hell's that?" And they go, "It's a gift. It's a gift for you." I said, "What the hell kind of gift is this?" It's a gift for you. Do with it as you will." Again, there's a reason for all these little things, not just to gift me, but again, it's over the years. This was kind of neat, but at the time I was still quite apprehensive. So they walk out of the room, and they leave me there by myself, and I go over to this box that's on the table, and I don't want to touch it, I'm afraid. Is it going to electroshock me? Is it the big joke now? Right? Is it going to make a noise? Maybe they have a sense of humor. By the way, they do, and I wish I had time in this talk right now. They have a cynical sense of humor. It's pretty funny. If there's time, I might say some of the things they do, but over time. But this was years of BS, years of not letting me know who they were, why they were there, what the reason was. But as I said, as these things evolved, I started seeing a bigger picture, and I can sit here and tell you these things today. Some of these things may be hard to swallow, I understand. I respect you just the same. I have no problem with that. And when I came forward years ago, whoops, wait, I think I went, screensaver. When I came out years ago, I knew that if I had tomatoes and rotten eggs thrown at me, I would just have to accept it. For those of you who can use this information, let it be with you. Anyway, so I walked up to the box, and I finally touched it, and it didn't hurt me. And I picked the box up, and I was turning it around, and it was perfectly square, about like that, and it was black, absorbent black. And I turned it, I couldn't see no lid, so I shook it, and I couldn't hear anything. And then I tried to pull it apart, and I was trying really hard like this, and I was trying really hard like that, and then I took it, these wireless mics are great. I took it and I put it between my feet, and I was trying to pull it apart like this, and it wouldn't work, and then I took the thing and I was going over the table, and I was going to go break it. And I stopped, because just as I was going like that, the voice, the telepathic voice said, "You didn't try to open it gently." I said, "Oh yeah, okay." So I grasped my hand over the top, and I just slightly pressured and pulled it open, and this horrific, horrible, most stinkingest smell came out of this box. And it's Twilight Zone, and inside of it was this, about this thick, was this black, tarry substance with glass tubes sticking in it. And they came into the room, and I said, "What the hell kind of gift is this?" And so I was getting to be more myself with them, too, as time went on. And they said, "It's a gift. It's a gift for you. We extracted it from your lungs." And so, okay, thank you. I'm grateful. I didn't say that, but I felt it, because I didn't want to show any feelings back in those years. However, as time went on, I learned that it wasn't so much to gift me, but it was so much to show me something. It was to show me that they possessed the technology, and so did the black op people, to molecularly extract any kind of toxin, any kind of impurity, or in my case, any kind of tar, molecule by molecule, into a reception box. So they have the technology to inintrusively program this thing to take out whatever is bad that should not be there, molecule by molecule, without tearing your guts up. And in my case, without having to scrape my lungs or vacuum, whatever they do these days. I'm not a doctor. But more importantly, that same technology can draw all the toxins out of the Earth's water, all the garbage in the atmosphere, and all the trash in the soil. These technologies are real. These technologies exist. And I'll get into how we can loosen it, at least how I was advised. And I guess when I say advised, what I'm meaning is what I was told, a way for disclosure to get this kind of stuff out, which I'll get into in a little while. So now we have, let me make sure my time is doing okay here. Now we have the ability to distort matter. Now we have what I know from personal experience to take you back in time. Now we have a technology that can remove what I just explained to you. And so, as I was saying, over the years, these things became more and more of an eye-opener to me. The ability to see a symbol and grasp 20, 40, 50 pages of text in just a matter of a split second. And all these amazing things that I know that in time can be ours. The thing about what most abductees will share with you, particularly the ones that retain some memory of the experience. And by the way, it's really interesting to watch these guys operate, because they do take the memory away. It's not nice. It doesn't hurt the people. But what I've learned over the years is because the experience itself gets in the way of what the message is that they get. And it's unified. It's a unified message. We'll come to a boiling point one day, I'm convinced, because of the mass abductions I experienced, and I'm going to get into that, because again, here's a time discrepancy thing, where these people will know exactly what took place and why and what they can do to bring us forward. And I'm solidly 100% convinced that any bona fide or any real abductee possesses this. Some of them are somewhat conscious of it. I think very few. I think I am. I'm certain that I am, but I say 95% recall. There's that 5% that I can't bring back, where it may be my part at that time, and we'll know what to do so we can evolve. But nonetheless, you know, there's a reason for them taking the memories away. And now what I'd like to do is go into a scenario where a mass abduction took place. And again, it's going to demonstrate, as I explain it to you, how, and things in perspective and relative, how mass is relative in size, yet it can be small and big, and well, I'll make sense in a second. Right after that situation with the box, and many other things took place prior to my first mass abduction, which was phenomenal, which I'll share with you. They were conditioning me for all these years to behave myself properly. Maybe some of you would have caught on a lot quicker than I did, but they're scary. But after a while, they're not scary anymore. So anyway, and you know, like I said, they don't like questions. Just they'll tell you what they want you to know, and you just go along with it, and you're not brainwashed, and you see the reason for why they are the way they are. They're just leaps and bounds ahead of us. And it's hard for them to come across because they're not people. But they do have things about them that are people-like, and you cherish those moments when you see it. But anyway, so my involvement in mass abductions. I got pulled the hard way, and I found myself in a clearing in the woods on an overcast night, standing there over a pile of people who were obviously sleeping. They were in their night clothes. And some were moaning and groaning. There was a woman, a blonde-haired woman, I won't forget her. She was rocking back and forth on the ground because she didn't know where she was. She was scared, but they were either totally paralyzed or partially paralyzed, but they were immobilized. And there was one gentleman standing next to me, fully dressed. He could stand up, that was about it. And all he kept saying was, I was driving my car, I was driving my car. And the rest of them were in their night clothes. And then to the left of me was another pile of people. And then to the left of them was another pile of people, I'd say 12 to 15. And just a little humor here. And there was a gray in each pile. Now, what are we doing out in the middle of the woods, a clearing in the woods? It was a large clearing, about the size of a football field, by the way. It's like they just took the trees down in the middle of nowhere. And my first telepathic words at that point were to calm her. So I thought to myself, oh, gee, I have a job. All right, I have a job. So I walked up to the girl and I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, look, you're going to be okay. They're going to take you into this room. They're going to teach you this alphabet and you're not going to like it, but you're going to learn a lot, and then they're going to do this and that. And then she started getting more scared. He says, you're telling her too much, just calm her. These guys are talking to me now, you know, they're talking to me. All right, so I told her something else, and then they told me to calm him. And then there were 3 lights in the horizon, and they were, like I said, it was overcast, but it was in the horizon. The only reason I knew that the lights were there was because the people on the ground started moaning and groaning, saying the ships, and trying to look in that direction. There's a connection. The crafts, they knew that I didn't even know they were there. They knew even though they were blacked out or paralyzed, they came to moaning and groaning. We're connected. And one light came over the top of me, my pile. I'm just going to say it like kind of rudely. And one over that pile, and and the third light came over that pile. And for the first time, I saw a craft from the outside because it descended from the clouds. And I saw what I thought was like the most majestic, glorious sight of my entire living life. It was dome-shaped on the bottom. It had windows. I could see grays and human beings scurrying about, looking out the window. Now we've got military, now we've got civilian in there, and we've got grays in there. And looking through the window at us down there. And then the second craft descended. Well, then this light beam came out. It was a white, bright light with a hue of blue. The second craft descended from under the clouds, gorgeous sight. The third craft descended under the clouds, a gorgeous sight. And I just stepped forward and went, they're beautiful, They're beautiful. I couldn't reach out far enough. They're beautiful. I was so elated. I was this paralyzed jerk for all these years, and now I'm getting to come out here and see this stuff. And then I blacked out. I found myself in this corridor with the people I was with, and I'll speed it up a little bit. And they were standing up. They were still zombie-like. And they said, by the way, these crafts are only 30 to 50 feet across. This is where I'm going with this. And we're in a corridor that was already the width of that and the length of it about 3 times longer. And the next telepathic instructions were lead them. This is just one of a mass abduction where there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these, and I'll tell you why. It opened up to something the size of basketball gymnasium. And there were rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of little seats with something that looked like monitors in front of them, and my next instructions were seat them. I took them one at a time. I took the first one to the end. I sat this person down. I started to walk back, but I got curious. I kept looking around. The telepathic voice said, no, 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 and I disobeyed and blacked out because I wanted to see what was going on more. When I came to, I was in front of my monitor. Now, the point here is that the room was literally 15 times. I'm not being a mathematician here, so I didn't. It's 30 times 15. I could be off here. Times the size of what you see. So again, now we have mass expanding, and then it's shrinking or expanding, the manipulation of matter. And when I came from this blackout, there must have been between 800 and 1,000 people sitting at these monitors. And we were hooked up. There was something either hooked to our calves or hooked to our arms. And I know what it was. It was to make us see the colors brighter, and there's a reason for it, and feel stronger emotions. Because these monitors, when they lit up, the most drop-dead gorgeous ocean that you had ever seen in your life from our past before we were here. The most beautiful scene you ever seen. And you just went turquoise blue, and you could hear all the people in the room go, oh my God, or it's beautiful. And then that scene disappeared, and then it was a mountain scene, and it took your breath away, and then it was a forest scene, and it took your breath away, and it was one beautiful nature scene after the other, and all you could do was just be how fantastic it was before we were around. And then each scene started getting uglier. The beautiful sea. Now, the scenes were captured from a time and period that they could go back to. Now we have again, see, I'm backing up this time thing with you, because when I start talking about the human beings that I've seen, it'll make more sense instead of me coming up here, oh, by the way, I've met a time traveler. Okay, so as that went on, the scenes got uglier. There were dead and bloated fish on top of the water, bringing us to the current and into the future. The trees were diseased. The air was polluted, and one after the other, they got uglier and uglier and uglier. And then the telepathic message, as if on a PA for everybody, was, "You're killing your planet. Your planet is dying. You're killing your planet. Your planet is dying." All those people got an environmental lesson in one way, shape, or form that was suited for them. The memory was taken away for another time. This is something they do. And again, we got scenes from the past. We got scenes from the future. And we've got rooms that seem small and then large. Once you get inside it, they have the ability to do all these things. And now I'm going to get to the interesting part, which, if this isn't already interesting, which is our time travelers. Now, this took, here I am 23 years talking about this and all these upsetting things that I started with and how one thing led to another and how this has evolved. I'm in they do these things under our noses. They bring people back. that they've bred, that they've raised in other worlds, human beings, right from the embryo, semen and ova, and they bring them back in their 20s, and they bring them back in landing parties, right under our noses, dress them up for wherever they are, and they love to take these people to tourist areas where everybody kind of dresses up funny because they're from everywhere else. Large Disney World-like places. Anyway, how do you know a time traveler? One of my first ones, I come walking into a public place and I sit down and have myself some dinner, and I order myself a beer, and I'm looking at the menu, and all of a sudden my heart starts to pound real hard in this chest, and my spine straightens up. And I know this sensation, it's the only sensation you get when you're around that extraterrestrial technology. Only now I'm sitting in a public place. I don't know what's going to happen. This is one of the first events. It is inclusive, a sensation is totally inclusive of that scenario. And this person, this man, walks into the room and he telepathically says to me, "Do you mind if I sit down?" Now, this is a perfectly normal looking human being. And I already got the gist of how we were going to do this scene. One speaks telepathically, the other one responds verbally. The other one, when it's his turn, responds verbally, and the other one responds back telepathically. This is a human being, I'd say within 500 years, he's us. So now, if you can imagine a conversation, like, no one can understand what you're saying, right? It's always half the response is missing from one person or the other, right? It's kind of cool, right? But you both know what's going on. So I thought, hey, that's really neat right off the bat. And, you know, he sits down, and now I know how to behave. You don't ask questions, you don't reveal anything, you behave yourself, I mean, all these things come from conditioning after all these years. He's one of us now. From what exact time period, I don't know. He sits down and he says to me, "So what's your name?" So I give him a BS name. You know, remember, I don't know his guys. He says, "No, it's not. It's Jim Sparks." And then we're communicating lightly about where I'm at and why I'm here. And he says, "What are you drinking?" And I said, "It's a Budweiser," into this conversation. It was my first beer, so I wasn't lit. And I was actually ordering food, nothing to concern yourself there. But anyhow, and he said, "How much is it?" It's going a telepathic thing back and forth. I said, "They got a special tonight, it's $1." And so he opens up his billfold, and I could see it. And he's got all these bills perfectly folded, flat and small, and like a file in this wallet, and he's flipping through the bills, and they're going like a little file cabinet in his billfold, and he takes out $1 and he unfolds it, and he looks at it, I think, to make sure it's the right year. That's my guess. And he orders the beer. Okay, so he gets his beer. And then he says to me, and this is where it gets really neat, he says, "Do you have can you get me a pen? Can you get me 2 pens and a sheet of paper?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went up to the waitress and I asked for 2 pens and a regular sheet of paper. Now he's going to show me what near future people can do. So he takes 1 pen in one hand on the table from the left of the page, top of the page, and he takes his right hand to the bottom of the page, and he proceeds to write my first and last name with both hands at the same time while quoting and not looking at what he's doing. Tax code, United States tax code from the late 1800s to the present with the decimal points. And not only is he doing this both at the same time, but he's writing upside down. He's writing in cursive upside down until everything meets in the middle. I want that. This is a time traveler. And I'll see, I want to leave this open for questions and answers, and I want to go into another time traveler. And I want to deliver the message on how we do that before we get to that point, too. So let me see which one, for the sake of time, that I want to talk about, because they're all pretty exciting, or at least, you know, you're gonna know that they are. If you were there, you would definitely love it, because it went from all this horror to all this fun stuff. This one is worth taking a couple minutes to go over, too. Again, this is within 500 years. Now I'm in an establishment, and I'm leaving this place, and it's a crowded hotel. It's a nice hotel. And I'm heading towards the valet, where I've got my car. And as I'm making my way through this large hotel, I get the sensation again that I was telling you about, but all of a sudden it immediately started to change. My head, my brain, my thinking, well, let me back up from that. All of a sudden, I get this rush on my body. And I took a breath and I let it out and went, oh man, do I feel good. And then my brain immediately, all the cobwebs went gone, any cobwebs that you can have, and my thinking started multiplying and expanding like I never, ever experienced in my life. It became 360 degrees. And so as I was walking, I'm going, and its telepathic voice says, I'll meet you outside. This is a time traveler. And as I'm walking, I'm going, oh yeah. And every breath that I took was like the best and the last and the first breath of air that your lungs can take in your entire life. And my mind felt so fine. And I understood everything. And I'm breathing and I'm walking out and I can't wait to meet this guy. And I'm this new human being. This is a transformation for us. And as I get to the back doors, and I open the back door, he's standing on the other side, and he's filled with the same thing. And he goes, how you doing? And I said the same way, I am fine. So I was in an arid climate. I let the trail run cold on these things, but use your imagination. Most people know where I've lived for 8 years besides, well, I've been in Australia for the last few years, but anyway. And I said, I'm fine. He says, you know, I really like it here, he says, but we sure can use some more rain. And my mind saw all the surrounding states, all the weather patterns, how everything works, what it would take to bring more rain there. And then my mind also saw that if I did that, I would deprive other areas for the sake of rain there. And then I said, that wouldn't be a good idea. And he says, yep, you got it. It sure wouldn't, would it? I said, no, it wouldn't. And then he tells me, by the way, these sensations, this knowledge, and all these things are going to pass in just a matter of seconds. And he leaves and he walks away. And I accepted it. I didn't like it, but I accepted it. But I didn't really feel bad about it. And then I asked the valet for my car, and it starts to come back to normal slowly. I get in my car, and as I get to the end of the driveway, it's all gone. But it's a message as to where we go. Travel time, get this knowledge, get this feeling, conquer death. Okay, now, for the sake of time, the message for disclosure. This is this is something that we all want. So I'm going to give you what they said to me to understand, a way of doing it, which is they claim that right around 60 years ago, they came to this planet after we were discharging nuclear weapons in hordes and met with leaders of the day and struck bargains, made deals, made treaties, contracts in a sense, for us to no longer use nuclear weapons. Don't build any more, don't make them any better, take them apart, get away from chemical and biological weapons, stressing on both of these things, and making arrangements for the Earth's environment in exchange for these super technologies. According to them, we turned around, I'm giving you the shortened version, we turned around and made money. Now I say we, the ones who had it, made money in weapons. And keeping this stuff secret to where we are up to this day with the black ops stuff, all the secret information that's there that we all know about in the UFO community and the researchers and what we study. What surprised me is that a lot of this is in human hands anyway. And to keep this stuff secret, and it got so convoluted over the years that we all know people have been discredited, people have been maimed, honest law-abiding citizens have been killed, and lots of terrible things have taken place for the sake of keeping this stuff secret. The crap with the money and making the money, the crap with power, the crap. There's a growing majority, according to them, they said their hands had no play in any of these horrible things. According to them, there's only one way out for them, not for spiritual reasons, but for practical reasons. And it's just something for you to think about, and I know there's those of you who've heard me say this before, which is 100% complete amnesty. This is a step towards disclosure. These people are afraid for their asses. You're coming forward saying, not only are you bringing these things forward, but along with bringing these things forward, the truths of what they've done are going to come out at the same time, and they're afraid of that. And so a 100% amnesty. So whatever it is they come up with, they can't be tried, they can't be charged or tried, prosecuted, or put in prison, or whatever the case may be.
What have they done?
Well, over the years, as I'm sure most of us know here, people have been put away, or people have been discredited, or the memory taken away when they get too close to the truth. And all these terrible things that God knows, they know, and I don't. But it's a major hindrance for disclosure. And we all want disclosure. We're all working for it. We're setting up the politics for it. We have the mind for it. We know what we want. The second aspect is what they'd like to see, but they emphasize more the amnesty more than anything. And the second point is a hands-on global project that involves a vast majority of human beings in this world to do something, so we can say that we all did this together, and it's a first step. Now, one of my focal points would be the rainforest, to protect the rainforest by law, and Amazonian rainforest, and it's these two things. And with these things in play, they'll meet us somewhere, but we need to move in this direction. They're not landing on your lawn or down the street or making connections on a massive global basis because they want to see these cards on the table, they want to see these things come out, and they want to see these things. They're claiming that we are at a pinnacle point in our time, because what I've learned about time, which I'm happy, now this can be argued with every scientist in the world, but this is just what I picked up. The butterfly effect, where a little thing can make a major change in the scheme of time in the universe, is almost the opposite. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to change make the smallest change. Time is resilient and wants to go back to what it's done before. It plays itself out that way. But according to them, the scale is balanced. It's a time in our history that's rare in the history of the human species. We've been here before, we've been here in other places. And a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right can mean self-destruction, or we all evolved to make it. The time travelers I'm seeing, and here's where the sneaky grin is, Some of us make it the way we are, but the majority of us do not. But I said it takes a tremendous amount of energy to change the smallest thing in time. The balance is that fine right now. So anyway, that's what they're claiming, the amnesty thing. And there's 10 minutes remaining. I'd like to leave that open for questions and answers. Q&A? So I think, yep, there we go. Hi.
Hi, Jim. What do these beings say about their spirituality?
You know, I wrestled with that for many years. And I define their spirituality as they reveal it to me, more so on the condition of our being, to evolve so we can join the galactic neighborhood, and spiritually, our environment and all the things that it houses. So do I hear them speak of a God? Do I hear them? No, and I think there's a reason they don't reveal that. Okay, so my sense of their spirituality is to see us evolve, but they're not going to give it to us. We've got to earn it because they've had enough trial and error to know that we've got to bring ourselves to a certain point before they can come out and help us any further. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it seems that you were given a lot of information. Were you being prepared for some event or some process or some future life? Also, are you coming out with a second book?
I've got a second edition. Oh, by the way, I've got a few left. I'll be sitting out there for anybody that would like to pick it up. There's not too many left, but it's called The Keepers, and it documents everything that I'm talking about. It's a pretty neat book, and that's a second edition. So I'm in the process of writing. So I guess you can call it the second book since the second edition. The third one isn't it's the first edition. So I'm in the process of writing the third book. And as far as my part is concerned, I'm missioned to put through a bill if I can, because I feel the United States is strong enough to maintain an amnesty bill. And obviously this is something that's going to take rallying, this is something that's going to take time, this is something that's going to take money. If you want to get involved, it's Jim Sparks, 888@yahoo.com. That's just a data bank. There's the other way you think you might want to do it. I've got business to take care of like everybody else does. And so I'm going at a pace that's steady and slow. And once I set myself up in the business that I am now, I'm living in Australia, but I want to make it convenient for me to do business in California, in the United States, my country, and Australia at the same time, to be able to go back and forth and be free so I can work even harder at this process. But that's the email if you want to help in that way. And when we're ready, we'll contact you. I hope that answered that.
Thank you.
And your Earth Foundation. That's to save the rainforest. That's the two things that I'm missioned. I got from them to do.
Jim, can you tell us about your teleporting to Mars and your experience there?
Mars? No, can't say that's ever happened.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got
Did you?
different author, I guess.
Oh,
Sorry.
That would have been neat, though. Sorry that didn't happen.
I was wondering why you feel they chose you and to what bigger or greater end than a more individual experience.
They have a processing ability, and they have an ability to keep the things they process in an organized way that's pretty astounding. It's an extreme thing. So they know and file away from day one every Homo sapien sapien and all the family lines. And I've never been privy as to why myself. Only the fact that they plucked me out of a certain family line that they've been following for years, like yours or anybody else's in this room. And if you can kind of see yourself and separate yourself from any kind of just look at in a statistical manner, as if you were working, a software in a machine, and you're looking for whatever qualities, and if they're called qualities, then, you know, they pluck me out of the fold and others out of the fold for that reason. But I can tell you, man, these abductions are, I used to think it was just a million. I believe it might even be as much as a billion. Maybe more, a little more than a billion, because these guys could do things under our noses that you wouldn't believe. They're thousands of years ahead. And these people are ingrained with the knowledge of what to do when the time comes. It's going to reach critical mass. So it's just not me that's so special. I think each and every one of us that feel that we've been involved in this stuff, it's going to come out.
We've heard a lot about how they tend to be deceptive. You know, those Bud Hopkins 1 year basically just said aliens lie.
Right,
And things like that. Do you believe a lot of the things that you were shown? Do you think that they were being straight with you, or do you feel like somehow you were made to believe something, or so on and so forth?
Well,
Take it from there, where you want to go.
No, I can answer that in two different ways. One of which is, I love Bud Hopkins. I knew Bud back and met with Bug, and Bud too, and my pet Bug, in the pioneer days. And I admire David Jacobs' work, and they can be very critical of the alien scenario because they take us a statistical point of view. And they categorize, well, Hopkins is an artist, but he's a great writer, and Jacobs is a science person, and he does it in a manner that clinically shows the odds and the percentages of what's a lie, what's pain, what feels good, what feels bad, and what you hear, and you come out with things that aren't very positive. But I understand why, so I don't have a problem with their view. They may have a problem with mine, even though I don't know Jacobs as well as I do Hopkins. I know he has a problem with mine, but we're still okay together. Because people are getting bits and pieces, and some of these things they're coming back with, and they're coming back with some of the things that are not nice or weren't totally taken away before they got the full picture. This has been my experience. So now, to answer that question in another way, can you be told a lie? Absolutely. They're masters, if they choose to be, of deception. That's why I think no matter what, the wisest men and the wisest women in power on this globe can't match a tenth of their thinking and the deception if they want to do it. And it's not to hurt us. It's just to keep us away from something they see they don't understand yet. These guys there can be 100 of them in this room right now, and we wouldn't know it. These things mean nothing to them. It's like working with kindergarten toys, and I don't mean to belittle us because we're evolving. Okay, but yes, they can project a thought in your mind and make you believe it's something that it's not. Usually, it's temporarily, but it's usually to calm you down. Now, when people are panicking in these places, I've seen them do this. They either put in their mind they're somewhere else, and there's angels, and they're being good to them, and they're having this wonderful spiritual thing, and then they're all calm. They calm down. Or other people are rough, tough, and tumble. They're going to make them think it's the devil, it's a monster, and if you don't behave yourself, you're going to, you're in peril. So you're going to have one come back and say, hey, it was fantastic, and you're going to have this other one come back and say, they're all from hell. So I guess we're out of time? Okay. Well, look, I want to thank you. Okay, yeah, thanks for all your help, man. You're a real pro. When I say people are The extraterrestrials that dealt with me were commonly referred to as Grace, with the short little worker beans. I was forced to learn converting our letters and our numbers, block lettering, cursive writing into a symbolic form. I thought it was stupid. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. When I would get back, I've had well over 100 abductions, and the first 18 months were a living hell and a living nightmare. And there's a reason for all of this, because it's going to sound a little bit negative at first. It's because it's exactly what they are, and what they are exactly is non-human intelligent beings. Emphasis on non-human. They don't have the same social structure. They don't have the same social structure, and they don't have emotions as we do, and they're extremely difficult to be around or be with. What made me unique, and even in those early days, was they never took the memory away from me, as I've seen years later with most abductees. Usually they'll take the memory away, and when people get back, they either thought they had a nice experience, or a traumatizing experience, or fragmented memories. And this nightmare went on for approximately 6 years, but it started to improve as 1 year led into the other. I tried to run away from these guys. Hey, can everybody hear me all right? Can you hear me? Okay, let me know if it gets duller. Hello everybody, it's great to be here. And I'm not too sure how many amongst you are very familiar with the Jim Sparks story. But to fill you in at first, I've had abduction experiences for the last 23 years. Prior to 1988, I had absolutely no interest in the phenomena whatsoever. Sure, I thought UFOs were neat and things like that, but that's about as far as it went. And abruptly and out of nowhere, in late 1988, I started having my first experiences. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what they were in those first few months. I didn't know they were demons, devils, aliens. I couldn't tell one from the other. I didn't want anything to do with it. They had me paralyzed. I was always in the same room, sitting in front of the same table. And they conducted medical procedures, wouldn't tell me who they were, why they were there. I could yell, I could scream, I could curse. I started loathing them, hating their guts. Better than 90% of the time, I fought them tooth and nail every time they wanted to do anything. I was on my own. Of course, I couldn't get anybody to believe it in those days. And so it was just not very good. But as time went on, it got better and better and better. And I started to see things and notice things and start taking things in because I started seeing some purpose for what they were doing. Little did I know at the time, which I'm going to get into now, and that's going to lead into their technologies. And then we're going to talk about the distortion of time, which time is something that I believe they've mastered. And that's the travel in it all naturally. But anyway, as things went on, I started to learn that this extraterrestrial symbolic form that they crammed into me to learn was a way of getting a monstrous amount of data in a very short period of time. You could take 20 pages of text and take whatever time it takes to read it, and then they could flash a symbol in front of your face, and you would absorb that whole 20 pages within a split second. So there was some kind of mental exercise with this, with that. So that started easing me a little bit, like, man, this is going somewhere. Any opportunity that I had in those days to get up and fight them, if I wasn't paralyzed, I would have, as I used to fondly say, now I fondly say, if you let me free, I'll squeeze your fat heads off your skinny little necks. And yelling and screaming and cursing and making up cuss words all along the way. But things started getting better as, as time went on. What makes them so interesting, and then what I know is in store for us, is the fact that they have amazing capabilities. And if we can evolve and cross the line without self-destruction, we're going to be capable of these amazing abilities also. But to interact with these beings, excuse me, to interact with these beings right off the bat is just something that took a long time to do. So along with sharing with you about the time travel aspect, I'm going to share with you why it's so difficult to be with them and what it would take from the years that I've learned how to be in that environment and get something out of it and make a connection. We're talking about beings that are 100% and completely telepathic. They do not speak. They have the ability to think and process information literally 100 times faster than we do. Whether these things be natural or whether they are technically
Good evening. Our last speaker for the day, Mr. Jim Sparks, has experienced unexplained encounters since 1988. 95 to 100% of the time, he has remained completely conscious, remembering every one of his experiences. During those times and during those experiences, he has witnessed and become familiar with some very highly advanced pieces of technology. Here to speak about the time travel, and time travel is a fact, Mr. Jim Sparks.